being an entrepreneur and going through that many years of issues, right? Like, and anytime you have a problem, there's generally an opportunity on the other side of the problem. I mean, a sale of a product or a service is a solution to that customer's problem.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Baktari MD. As you know, this year we're going to be doing Crash CEO School, where we go over leadership skills to take your organization to the next level. And today I have an amazing guest, Preston Brown, who is a serial entrepreneur and really a great innovator. He's led many companies. He's up to, I think, 17 or 18, where he's innovated and really cultivated a pattern and a model to grow businesses and take them to the next level. So I wanted to bring him onto the show to have him share his ideas of how you make any organization grow by providing effective leadership. Preston, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. Excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you. First of all, let's just tell people a little bit about you. I know you have run and started many businesses. Can you give us your backstory of how you got involved and what made you decide to get the entrepreneurial bug?
Sure, yeah. I'll give you the 3 to 5 minute version to kind of keep it concise.
Okay.
I grew up poor, amazing family, all the love you can imagine. Great mom, great dad. And we grew up in a little trailer park called Cañutillo, Texas, which if you have El Paso, Texas here, and over there is Cañutillo. Nobody really thinks about it, right? And one day my dad gets this kind of wild hair and he decides, I want that life I see on TV, not the one that we have in this little mobile home. And he was a brilliant guy, okay? He was a member of Mensa. He was a hardworking guy, metallurgical engineer by trade, just never went and got the sheepskin, didn't get the degree. And he went to work. He actually started working in a little shed next to our house, started making things for people, whether it was car parts for high-end cars or anything that you could do, metallurgical engineering-wise. This guy had it all. It was incredible. But he didn't know some things. He didn't really understand billing. He didn't understand collecting. He didn't understand how he should price his products or the service he was providing. And you know, when you're a poor family and one part of the family doesn't understand that, and of course, you know, then Murphy's Law happens, mom loses her job, money starts running slim, and it runs out a lot faster if you don't have much of it anyway. And so I remember the day the fight happened, and I remember that, you remember those big old cast iron frying pans, the ones that keep the flavor. One of those goes flying at the cardboard wall of the trailer, and everyone was paying attention. And I don't remember all the words that were said or yelled, but I remember my mom saying, and she was tough as nails, a real man can feed his family. Collect what you're owed or don't come home. And that was big words. I mean, this guy was like my hero. I mean, he was my stepdad, not my real dad. I didn't know that at the time, but he's 6'4", broad shoulders, member of Mensa, really a brilliant guy, awesome. And so, of course, I'm scared. And I got to be the charity piece. I went with him. I went up with him to a house not far from where I live now. And my 6'4" dad met this guy, all of about 5'9". And he did what a man should do when he is owed money. He demanded what he was owed. Demanding went to asking. Asking went to something less than asking. And eventually my dad settled for a wad of cash in his pocket. Coming out of this guy's pocket, we drove to the local Albertsons, or I guess it was a Smith's back then, and we went home. And I tried to talk to him the whole time, and I watched him, you know, his eyes were watering. And he did the right thing. He protected his family, fed his family, followed my mom's orders. He also gave up on his business dream and went and got a job the next day. And I think the unintended result that he got was I learned something on that day, and I learned hatred. Like the guy that was taking advantage of my dad, I could have killed him. I mean, I think I was 7, 8 years old. If there had been a gun in the room, I would have had no problem pulling a trigger. And going from kind of that love is the meaning of life to, at this stage, 7 or 8 years old, money's the meaning of life, I became an entrepreneur. That was my moment. And my mom was going to school. She had a different strategy for wealth. And I started stealing lemon juice packets from Grandy's. And there's a little chicken place here. I would sell them at school for 10 cents each because I didn't care. Hated or loved, I needed to find a way to get money. I got caught one day, and the manager became my first mentor, made a deal with me. He became my distributor, started buying boxes of lemon juice packets. So I became the honest entrepreneur. And I mean, it grew from there. I became the corporate a-hole, if you will, Jonathan. I mean, if you thought Donald Trump was rough, man, the people that thought you're fired from him was bad should have heard me. I made a lot of money. This went on till 2019. Got rich, got several companies, became the millionaire. But I was a shit father. I was not a good husband. I was focused on money, only money. And I ran nonstop. And one day I get the call, and the call was from my brother-in-law. And he says, "Hey, man, you need to come over. Your dad's gone." And out of my mouth comes, "Where did he go?" But my heart had sunk. My stomach had sunk. I could feel in my whole body something was wrong. And it'd been a weird day. And I broke, and I remember driving home across town to Mom's house. And I remember looking around the room, and there was Dad on the floor. He wasn't there. There was all the people that I loved, and I started thinking to myself, I'm like, wait a minute. I've spent my entire life with money as the meaning of life. This lesson I learned at 7 years old. Mm-hmm. And I built some big companies, and I built some good formulas for how to get there. And what I learned before that was love is the meaning of life. And here I am with every single person I have in life. And all I want is more time with them because I didn't realize how short it was. And so that was my pivot moment, maybe to take me to the entrepreneur I am today. And it shifted me. I stopped giving two shits about growth, and I started really concerning myself with automation. How do I create a business that is an engine, that is a machine, that is a vehicle that I can get in and drive, and it'll take me where I want to go faster and safer and in a way that I want to get there, right? And go figure, like all these growth coaches all over Google and YouTube and everything else that are there, and they're all amazing. There's nothing wrong with them, but they're only teaching one facet. And automation turned out to be the key. Like as I started automating companies, growth was one key component in that automation, right? And the companies started gaining more value. I mean, the less necessary you as the owner are to your business, the more you're going to get on an exit when you look at your EBITDA, right? So right. It turned out that was the juice and the squeeze, and that's my journey of entrepreneurship from then to now.
But President, by the way, I'm sorry about your loss, first of all, and that's a tough thing to go through. But having said that, many people though have these sort of life events. What is it about you that made you realize that it's time? You weren't a spring chicken, you weren't a kid anymore, yet you still were able to go in a different direction. Yeah, I commend you a lot, but what made you use that event to go in a different direction? It's the right thing to do, but a lot of people don't learn from that, and they just only have one gear, and they just keep going in that direction. And I commend you. And maybe it's a lesson for other people that it's not too late to, turn over a new leaf and try a more healthy, purposeful way of running their lives and business.
Yeah, great question. And maybe I'm going to give the smartest answer, but it's probably also the stupidest answer that you're going to hear. But I think it's also the most true. Sometimes the simplest things are the most true. Being an entrepreneur and going through that many years of issues, right? Like, and anytime you have a problem, there's generally an opportunity on the other side of the problem. I mean, a sale of a product or a service is a solution to that customer's problem. And so I kind of grew up inadvertently receiving this lesson that your problems are your gifts, or they can be your opportunities if you handle them right. And so normally your greatest strength and your greatest weakness, they both come from the same moment, right? The single most important thing I think there is for any entrepreneur or leader, because from what I've seen from your content, you teach a lot of leadership, is the ability to learn. And learning is not something that happens in a comfort zone. I mean, if you want to grow flowers, you take a seed and you shove it in a pile of shit. I don't think it's the most comfortable place for the seed. So what does it do? It grows out of that seed. 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later, ladies lean down and smell the flower right above the pile of shit. So the problems are the gifts that grow into something beautiful if you learn something from it. So I've got this, and maybe I'm dumb enough to think that everything that goes wrong is a gift from God if I can figure out how to make it.
Wow. Well, but talking to you all, even before the show, sure sounds like you learned a lot in a short amount of time. I want to kind of go over some of the things that you might be able to help other leaders with from what you've gleaned since then. Let's talk about a couple of things I have down here, the 4 flows of capacity planning, because I want other leaders to learn from you about how they can channel your knowledge into growing their business and becoming better leaders. Do you want to talk about that briefly?
Sure. Yeah. So the 4 flows of capacity, it's honestly one of my favorite topics to talk about in business. And anytime I'm talking with a new entrepreneur that new to me, that I just met, that I don't know, that I want to know about, I'm asking questions that lead into these 4 flows, right? Like, so anytime you're in business, you're dealing with a thing called throughput. Okay. You're getting leads, selling those leads on your product or service, which is a solution to their problem. Once you've sold them on it, you're in the delivery phase where you have to deliver on the product promises you made in the sales process. And then there's kind of that fulfillment phase, the cash portion. So leads, sales, delivery, cash. This is where you get paid, right? And any time that you have a machine that is generating any level of throughput, there's going to be stop gaps. There's going to be bottlenecks, okay? Like, I'll give you a fun example. Like, you remember COVID just happened, right? Like, one of my businesses, a home building business, okay? Framing was going through the roof in cost, okay? We were all having capacity issues for framing. It didn't matter if I sold 100 homes or 10 homes. I could only frame 10 homes a month. That was my production ability. 15 homes a month if I got enough lumber and enough trades to put the lumber together. So I immediately went out and I made a collaborative relationship with a framing company, and I started doing trades on the secondary lumber market and buying truckloads of lumber. Okay. And luckily I was capitalized enough to buy enough lumber that when it went further, which we thought it was going to do based on some of the economic policies around Canada and oil, which is a completely different story, but they decided to make money on their lumber instead. I made a good bet, and we wound up being a lumber distributor to many of my competitors and receiving lumber at a far lower price for ourselves because we bought in at the previous price before it accelerated all the way. So we subordinated everything in our delivery process, though. So like, you think progress equals happiness, right? Like, leads, sales, delivery, cash. If progress equals happiness and everything's going up, my anchor was delivery because I couldn't get enough lumber and enough trades to deliver there. So once I subordinated everything there, all of a sudden I could go and equalize the others to it. Does that make sense? You have to see, where is your bottleneck in your throughput process? Are you having a lead getting business? Are you having a sales problem making a good product promise on the solution that you're providing for your consumer? Like, are you afraid to talk about that consumer's problems? If you're afraid to talk about their problems, how the hell are you going to talk about your solutions, right? So that's a huge part of the sales process, is eloquently discussing their problems and how you solve them. Then in delivery, where you're actually fulfilling upon their needs, like, there's going to be several steps in here, at least if you're in manufacturing, and at least one if you're in the service business. And you have to make sure that you're delivering upon that. If you sell more than you can deliver, you better have the ability to outsource and increase your deliveries somehow. Otherwise, you're going to get a bad reputation later. So managing these 4 flows and creating an equalized throughput gives you the ability to balance your operation and build a brand.
And I guess the old adage, you're only as good as your weakest link in that process, is what's going to hurt you.
100%.
I get that. So tell me about the 6 returns. We talked about that offline, but
you know what? Let me give you one more piece that on the 4 flows that I almost forgot.
Okay.
And it's so good. When I analyze companies, an owner of a company can work in leads, can work in sales, can work in delivery, can work in cash. And we as owners, we love believing in people because we obviously have believed in ourselves to get to the level we're at. We believe the same thing for our employees. Employees generally, unless they're that C-suite level employee, cannot work in more than 2 consecutive flows. So an employee can work in leads and sales. An employee can work in sales and delivery. An employee can work in delivery and cash. But if you put an employee in leads and delivery, you will break the machine, because the employee does not have the risk-reward relationship to your business that you as the owner do. The employee may have a good job, but they're not going to get rich at the same pace you do. And if you go out of business, they're going to go find a new job. They're not going to go bankrupt and get divorced and everything else. So they don't have the risk or the reward proposition. Never in more than 2 flows, and they must be consecutive. Every business I have ever analyzed has at least 1 or 2 employees in 2 non-consecutive flows or all 4 flows, and their throughput is highly compromised. This is easily $1 million hack for most entrepreneurs.
Wow. But what about senior leadership that oversee the whole thing? So I get that the employees that are in the trenches, but just like you're a senior leader, and then would it be okay for your senior leaders to have a more global view of all those 4?
100%, but they're going to be niched, okay? Like, so you're the CEO training facility, and I love the way that you named your podcast because it's so important. Like Chief Executive Officer. So that is a high level. That's beyond senior, right? Like a senior leader. I think a senior leader in an organization, I call them a DO, which stands for do, right? So they need to have a team in each, no more than 2 of those consecutive flows, and that they're measuring. But since they're a do, they're good enough that they can fit into any area that has the weakest link, because I don't believe in hiring managers. I believe in hiring measurers. And the measurer is there to find the weakest link in any of the 4 flows and step in. If they are the do, they go step in and support here. Now, going higher than the do, the DO, the director of operations, you get to your CFO, which is a senior leadership, or your COO, your operations officer, your CMO, marketing officer, CIO, investment officer, whichever one of these C-suite category leaders that you have. These people obviously can think in all 4 flows specific to their niche. But like my CFO may be able to identify that we need more marketing, but he's not going to be able to peg what my CMO will on identifying the target customer, knowing how to meet their needs, all of that. Does that, you follow me? So the answer is yes and no. They can measure in all 4.
Yeah, depending on where they are in that leadership to senior leadership. Okay, so let's talk about the 6 returns. I really want to hear about that because I was intrigued by how you framed it originally.
So I made the 6 returns because I kept hearing people kept talking about ROI. I went to an event with a lot of very high performance entrepreneurs, and a wildly successful guy, I won't mention his name because everybody will know it, but he's a billionaire, kept saying return on investment. And I had the opportunity to hang out with Kevin Harrington in like a group Zoom one day, and he would never stop talking about return on marketing. And so in my brain, I was like, okay, well, return on investment, return on marketing. Like, why is this billionaire guy, this like wildly successful guy, everybody knows his name, okay? And he keeps talking about return on investment, but he's a billionaire. Obviously, he's already received 100% of his investment back. So anytime he's talking about the initial investment he's making, he's literally just stroking himself. It's all an ego feed. So return on investment, once you've gotten your investment back, needs to be re-looked at. You have to start looking at ROM. ROI translates to ROM when the investment has been received in full. And ROM is cost of customer acquisition. It's measuring the lifetime value of your customer. And you take, okay, well, the cost of acquiring the customer is my ROM. The lifetime value is here. How many times, if say it's a high price customer, like a home buyer or something, if I've got a $150,000 lifetime value of a customer and it costs me $4,000 to get him, but it's going to take me 6 months to produce, how many times can I arbitrage this and get construction loans and put those customers into my products? You follow me? So ROI translates into ROM later. And then you have to start thinking, okay, well, once I've dialed in ROI to ROM, now I need to figure out how quick should I scale? So this is where all the scaling nuts get excited, okay? And I like to measure return on debt, okay? We live in an arbitrage economy. Since the 1970s, we removed gold from the dollar. It's no longer an asset, meaning borrowing money is good. That is why the Federal Reserve could go to 18% back under Volcker, but now they go to 5.5%, and what? The economy's like struggling. Because back in the day, the consumers borrowed. The consumers have always borrowed. So if you raised rates, it raised their cost. But in those days, the manufacturer, the distributor, and the retailer did not borrow. Now they do. So you inflated their cost by inflating their debt. Manufacturer, retailer, distributor, and consumer, you're getting a 400% hit to inflation by raising interest rates. It's why we're seeing discombobulation in the market. So when I looked at return on debt as a growth trajectory in an arbitrage economy, because every smart business that wants to grow should look at debt, okay? I balance it against return on balance sheet equity. So ROD to ROB. If you have a $10 million equity company and you have $10 million in debt, your trajectory in returns is equal, and you are growing at the perfect and safest metric for your particular industry. Okay, so that's your return on balance sheet, return on debt. The next one I take kind of as an owner because it's emotional. I think a lot of people, especially startups, they really screw this up. And the guys that are really successful in business, I love them. They're brilliant. Whether they knew this up front or they figured it out over time, they measure ROT, return on time, and ROE, return on emotions. Like, I like this. I like helping entrepreneurs make less stupid mistakes that I made because it makes me feel good. I like people having happy marriages and being great dads like I am now and not fucking it up like I did. So I get a great return on my time. I get a rise on it. I get a great return on my emotions. Otherwise, I would not do these podcasts, right? And so you have to look at all of these 6 returns: return on investment, return on marketing, return on balance sheet equity, return on debt, return on emotions, return on time. These are the 6 returns, and your weakest one is generally the one holding your company. It's no different than those 4 flows. The weakest one is the one holding back your throughput in the 4 flows. The weakest return is the one holding back your company on the returns. If you're doing something you're not passionate about, that will eventually kill you. It's just an investment if you're not passionate about it.
Well, that's a great point, because I think a lot of people pick and choose their businesses by what opportunity presents itself, not necessarily what they're excited about. I know a lot of people who just literally, go into the landscaping business because, that they stumbled onto it, their cousin had it, and so I always tell people, I have a whole thing on picking the right business, but part of what you said is involved in getting into the right business and having a passion for it. So whether it's your emotion and eventually your time, it becomes something that's more than just dollars and cents. I think earlier on you alluded just to, just being in business for the sake of making money. But when you add those other things, I think it goes to your point that you're more likely to be successful long-term if you have those intangibles. Would you agree with that?
100%. And let me sprinkle this in. If you're an early entrepreneur and you're just starting out, you're going to get your return on emotion and return on time just by being successful in anything. But at some point, so you might get into landscaping because, hey, there's an opportunity there. That doesn't mean you should stay in landscaping. Okay. When I started as a home flipper, I was a realtor, and I was like, man, these margins suck. I'm doing this for 3%. That's a shitty margin. And then I got into, okay, well, what if I flipped a home? All right, I'm making 20%. And then I said, well, but I have to peel back layers of this onion on every home I'm flipping. And so I have to go in, assess it, pull back layers. What if I built homes? Because then it's just all the same ground up, step-by-step process every single time, and I can do 100 in a row. So it turned into a pivot. Where you start doesn't have to be where you finish, but at all points in your career, you should be looking at the 6 returns, because things do change over time. I felt great becoming a successful agent. Then I became, there's a glass ceiling here. Then I felt great as a home flipper. Then I felt great as a hard money lender. Then I felt great building homes.
Right. But, as I'm hearing you say this, what comes to my mind is this whole idea that what you're not talking about is that every one of those pivots, there was theoretical risk. And I think when you look at people who don't become entrepreneurs, who settle into a 9-to-5 job, sometimes even well-paying, it is those pivots require going into areas of uncertainty. Because, let's be honest, you never built a home until you built one.
Yeah.
So what was that going to look like? What happens if the house fell apart? What happens if you got sued the next day? What happens if nobody bought that house, your first house that you built? So what's interesting is you have to be hardwired on some level that you're comfortable with the risks, because otherwise people have great ideas. People have ideas of pivoting all the time. But what makes a person say, you know what? I'm not going to be a real estate agent. I'm actually going to go and, flip houses. And, well, I'm not going to flip houses. I'm going to build houses. And, I'm not going to just build houses. I'm going to, lend money for the houses. There is something to be said. When you meet people, when you coach people, what was that intangible that made people be able to cross those rivers and pivot and take those risks? Calculated or not, they're risks.
So, yeah, you're asking a bigger question, and I'll probably dive into it. We're going to go into maybe more of the leadership side because it's a really good topic. You know, I think the best moment in my life was when my dad got cheated, and the next best moment in my life was the day that my dad passed away. And those are also the worst moments in my life. They're both best and worst. They're the worst because of the amount of pain I had. They're the best because the amount of learning I got to receive. Does that make sense? And with those situations and circumstances, I I feared giving up on my dreams because I watched my dad do it. And I watched my dad compromise. And if you think of promise, like if you comp a promise to yourself, like you just gave up on a promise to yourself, like people, the number one emotion that I think drives all of us is fear, right? And what you fear is probably going to be the number one thing that drives you. I fear living a mediocre life. I fear being a brilliant person that doesn't leave the world a better place. That scares the crap out of me. I mean, above all else, I fear disappointing God. I wake up every morning. I'm like, how can I make you proud of me today, God? What do I need to do to make you proud of me today? And you know what? Maybe some people are like, oh, he's a simpleton, or oh, he's a religious, whatever. You think what you want. It's working for me. But I'd rather be scared of that than scared of losing. Like the word problem in my world, and this is not my world, this is Latin and Aramaic, comes from the word emblem, right? If you see a stop sign on the road and you blow past it, it's a problem. If you stop, it's just an emblem. You just stopped, measured, proceeded forward. It said, hey, there's an indicator there could be a problem. So I look at life and I kind of think, well, I generally go into an industry and I try to find the stupidest person that's succeeding. And then I figure out what they're doing right. And if I feel like, hey, I may not be as stupid as that guy, I could probably do it better. Then I go find the smartest person in the industry. Okay? And if I find the stupidest person and the smartest person, and I look at what they're doing right, like success leaves clues. You get what you measure. I mean, when I bought my home building company, I was a realtor that became a home builder, right? And none of the builders in El Paso would talk to me. So I flew out to Lubbock and I met these guys that had this company called Beat and Bow, and they were really cool. And they started sharing all these secrets. They're doing 1,500 homes a year. There's no builder in El Paso doing 1,500 homes a year. I fly out to Florida because I was part of a mastermind. There was a guy doing 900 homes a year. You know what was really interesting? Him and the guys at Beat and Bow had really similar processes. And they had really similar ideologies. They were driven by different kinds of fear. So, the way I talk to people about fear, because there's always fear of failure, right? But if you have goals and your goals in life are to be better than where you are at now, you want to go further than where you are at now. Like we all want the same thing, right? We want more. Well, to get more, you have to overcome something. And if what you're overcoming today scares you, then you're never going to get more. So you have to find something bigger to be scared of, or you're never going to achieve your goals. Like I would rather be scared of something much bigger. Like, we just passed 100 million in debt, and I'm so excited because now I can go make the same jokes that Trump made, where he's like, if you have $1 million in debt, it's your problem. 100 million, it's the bank's problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like now I look at those numbers and I'm counting the commas on what I owe, and I look at the debt service coming out every single month. I think our debt service last month that we were committed to, like where we guarantee it, was like $600,000, $700,000. That's before we look at the non-committed debt on the investments, right? And holy smokes, like you think about these numbers and they're bigger than you ever looked at as a kid. Of course it's scary. But you know what's scarier? What's scarier to me today than that is if I screw it up, I have to lay off all these people. So I better find a way to do it better so I never have to lay off all these people. Find something better to be scared of. There's a good side of fear.
eNational testing makes getting a simple laboratory test as easy as ordering something online. With 3 simple steps, you can have your tests ordered for STDs, general health, allergy testing, diabetes screening, blood titers, and more. You can simply go in for testing the same day and get your results quickly to your email. eNationalTesting.com's complete healthcare panels come with easy-to-understand results at over 2,700 locations nationwide. It's time to focus on yourself. eNationalTesting.com. Easy, convenient, and tailored to your health needs.
But the other thing, like as a segue to that, is, 5 reasons businesses fail. So we talk about risk and being afraid of failure, but what are the things that make businesses fail then? Right? I mean, you're telling me the fear of failure is what's motivating you and a lot of other people, but what are reasons then that businesses fail? Is it just not having enough fear? What goes into that?
So I made this catchy content a while back, and it was like the 5 reasons businesses fail. And the truth is, there's probably not 5 reasons. There's probably 5,000 reasons, but you know what they all equate to? They all boil down to one thing. And so I don't even like that content. Like, I made it a while back. If you see it on Instagram or something, please like it, heart it, follow it. But there's better content that I put out. But it all comes down to failure to learn. Okay. At every stage of your life, there is the reality of what you have around you. And then there is the ideology. Okay. There's perception of what really is. And then there's perspective. And that's what really is through your filters. Okay. Now, to give you an example that's probably a politically incorrect example, but it'll get the point across because I can't think of anything else. If I see a woman walk by and I'm a person that's been divorced 10 times and I'm like, ooh, I hate women. Oh, what a bitch. She may not be a bitch. I may not know her. She's probably a very nice lady. But my perspective filtered on what I saw. The only thing that really happened was a woman walked by, right? A racist could not be a racist unless they were perspecting facts. Does that make sense? They're going to perspect their ideology and put that above their own reality. So if you have an entrepreneur's main job, in my opinion, is to subordinate your ideology to your reality. You need to find out what is and what really is and get over what you think it should be. Like, as a production home builder, right now, my ideology is, man, the Fed should really have dropped the rates about 4 to 6 months ago. But the reality is they did not. And so if I'm living in my ideology, I'm going to be very poor. If I'm living in my reality, I can move past all of my competitors.
Got it. So meaning, really, you have to deal with reality, not what you want reality to be.
You have to be able to learn. You have to be willing to learn, and learning never comes from a comfort zone.
Okay. So other than not learning, meaning staying rigid, are there other traits that contribute to failing that you've seen?
Lack of curiosity, which links to not learning. So probably the biggest one is people try to take their business and treat it as an island, and it's not. Okay. There's 4 flows to life and that are needs, and there's one that's kind of a 5th. It's not a need, but you really should have it. And I think that's faith, or bringing energy in. Family, energy expressed, fitness, your health, your well-being, and finance, right? Like your money. We live in a, resource-driven world. And then the last one is fun, right? Well, so most of the entrepreneurs that I've seen that are failing, that are struggling, they have trouble mainly in faith and family. It has nothing to do with their finance, but it translates to their finance. If you have no ability to believe in yourself and your capability, and that, whatever you believe that your God is, made you in his image, and you can do anything, the faith of mustard seeds, you can move mountains, all that, then you're broken on faith. And if you don't know how to show love and be loving and have fun and all that, then you're broken on family. And if you bring that into your business, you're going to create a toxic culture. You're going to create an environment driven by fear. Like, it's there's always truth in a paradox, right? Like your worst day and your best day are the same day. Well, can God create a rock so big that God cannot lift the rock? And the answer is and If he's God, then yeah, he could do that. But if he's God, then he would be able to. So when you think about these paradoxes, I think the most important trait in any leader, the most important is being able to learn. But the second most important trait in a leader is you got to be dangerous. And we live in a world where after COVID, everybody wanted to talk about safety. Safety, safety, safety. Well, if I'm a leader and you're on my team and you're not pulling your weight, I have to be dangerous enough to remove you or train you so that you do pull your weight. Otherwise, I'm going to let the entire team go down because you're the weakest link. I have to be dangerous enough, like a spear, man. What's the most dangerous part of the spear? It's the tip. Well, everybody behind that spear is safer because that spear is out ahead, protecting them from what's out there. I have to be dangerous enough to cut my way through that market, to take market share from my competitors who are less efficient, to keep my team safe. So I'm dangerous to create safety, if that makes sense. So you have to be able to learn. You have to be dangerous enough to step outside of maybe some of the taboos and the political correct ways of thinking about everything. And I think if you fear being dangerous, you cannot run a business. If you are unwilling to learn, you cannot run a business. Those two.
Yeah. You know, as I'm hearing, dangerous and learning, basically we're talking about you have to be out there pivoting, taking risks, modulating, changing if need be. You have to adapt. You can't be the smartest guy in the room. You got to learn and just move your company ahead because you're protecting all your employees. You're protecting your family. There's a lot on the line. So I get that. I want to circle back and kind of talk more about what you've learned in the last few years in terms of leadership skills. I have this philosophy that being a leader is not a soft skills. Just like you wouldn't be able to land a plane just because you're a good guy and people like you. I think you can't be a leader of a company just because people like you or it was your idea, your money. That you actually need skill sets to, hire, fire, enroll people in your vision, to motivate, to discipline, to give direction, to mentor. Talk about those skill sets because I don't think you can just know them by just hanging out. That you actually have to find mentors. You mentioned you belong to groups and had other mentors. Talk about the importance of acquiring skill sets to manage a company and an organization.
Yeah, I would say you have to have the right mindset, heart set, and be able to develop the right skill sets. And the skill sets are going to change as you develop. Like the skill sets of being a startup entrepreneur and the skill sets of being somebody who's doing 50 million in revenue or 100 million in revenue. Wildly different skill set, but they can be adapted and developed over time as you're getting there, right? And you have to have the mindset to where you're open to it and the heart set to where you believe. I mean, if you think about the word belief, it comes from the roots of be, love. Like you have to believe that you're enough to be able to do that. But so skill sets, to start with, if you don't have somebody that you're modeling, somebody that you're emulating, I mean, I emulate lots of people and you don't have to have a lot of money. Like I joined Tony Robbins Platinum Partnership and spent like, I don't know, 80 or 90 grand a year to be part of that, plus travel and everything. And that was amazing. I highly recommend that. I was a part of a group called Your Best Life. I actually launched that group, owned that group. Funny enough, Tony Robbins sued me when I owned that group because they didn't like it. We settled. We all became friendly later, I guess. So that turned out good. But, like I all these skill sets, all those groups that I was a part of, those were great. And you could pay a lot of money and go get a group like that. But I'll be honest, I probably learned more when I was a broke entrepreneur. I read the book Titan by John D. Rockefeller. And it was amazing. It was like this 30-hour book. And I say I read it. It was on Audible. So like I listened to it when I was driving and everything else. I didn't read it. It'd be a lot of reading. But in that 30 hours of listening, I found things about him that were like me. And so then I was like, oh, wait, what if I could do that? Like this guy was a master of efficiency. Like he was brilliant. Like he wasn't always the tycoon on oil. He was doing trading and shipping. And one time he cheated didn't get insurance. And luckily it came through. Anyway, like great stories around this guy, but wildly efficient guy. And so he helped me understand things on efficiency. And then I read about Andrew Carnegie. And so these kind of became some of my first mentors. Then as I was kind of going around thinking, well, I can do some of these things, taking the opportunities I had, which was real estate and Amway and anything I could get at that point. Because like when you're starting out, nobody's going to be like, hey, would you like to run Tesla? Nobody's going to do that, okay? But when you're starting out, somebody will be like, would you like to sell soap for Amway? Start there if you have to, whatever, start. But I started looking around at other guys that had the life I wanted, that had the marriage I wanted, that had other things that I wanted. And I would go purposely spend time with them. I would go say, hey, can I add value to you some way? Can I work for you for free for a month and just learn something? And you know what? It's really funny. Like my dad used to say, if you're willing to work for free, you'll always be paid. And that's how I got my first few jobs too. So
Wow.
It's funny because everybody I got around and did that with later, I was so valuable. They were like, well, can I hire you? And I'd be like, no, I really want to own a business. Would you like to partner? Can I be your investor? And that's how I got like my first mentor. Is he was a real estate broker, and I wanted to flip homes, and he became my lender and he became my broker. And then I was like, wow, I can flip homes better if I started teaching people how to flip homes. And so I started teaching all the realtors in El Paso how to flip homes if they joined his brokerage. And he was mentoring me and helping me. And later, he gave me half the brokerage. We created a fund using his wealth and started loaning all them money. And then we became the largest home flipper in El Paso. We started flipping over 100 homes a year. I got a call. This is, 10 years ago, so I hope I'm remembering it right. But it was the home investors, the We Buy Ugly Houses caveman guys. And they were like, would you like to buy a franchise? And I love systems. So I was like, yeah, tell me more. Like, what can you teach me? They're like, we'll teach you how to do 30 deals a year. I was like, I don't want a pay cut. I don't want to make less money. Like, we're doing over 100 without paying fees. Like, why do I need you? And so mentors, critical. But then you have to be able to find, my mentor and I are completely different people. I'm this like intense, high passion, sales, spend money to make money type of guy. He was so tight it squeaked when he walked. He would print something and then he would turn the paper upside down, put it back in the printer and print it again, not to waste paper, as a decamillionaire. And I was like, geez, like it irritated the shit out of me. I was like, what are you doing? It's such a waste of time to flip the paper over. But his counterbalance to my nature made me so much better. Like, and so then I started looking for like different types of talent. And one of my favorite ways to assess talent, there's a lot of ways to do it. But it takes lots of ingredients to make a pie, and a business is like a pie. Like, you got to put all the ingredients in. I go out and I find people that are radically different than me, that if I was hanging out with them having a beer would probably annoy the shit out of me. And then I'm like, okay, how do I find something that I admire about them? Then I'd study them. And then if I can, I'd hire them and I'd build companies around them. I mean, you go look at my bio and it's like 18 companies. Dude, I don't run 18 companies. I mean, of the 7 that I'm actively involved in day to day, I mean, I coach all the people that I'm in business with. So I guess I'm a coach, but I own the companies that the people are in that I coach. And some of them have a partnership or profit share with me, but my skill was really a talent scout and an economist and a social psychologist, not just an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur was the skill sets I learned as I was growing, and we'd run into new walls. Like, we'd hit glass ceilings, then we'd have to find a workaround. We'd have to innovate. We'd have to find a way around. But if you find the people not like you, and there's this thing called DISC, the DISC test. D for direct, I for influencer, S for kind of the steadies, and C for the conscientious. Well, the D's and the I's are radically task-oriented people. And the S's and the C's, I'm sorry, the D's and the C's are task, and the S's and the I's are heart-centered people, right? And so what I kind of started finding was, okay, well, if you're a D and an I on your disc, then you're heart-centered and you're task-centered. You're balanced. If you're a D and a C, which I realized kind of going through my story, and money was the meaning of life, and I was very transactional and very toxic, I was a C for conscientious and a D for maybe direct, but maybe dictator and maybe dickhead. Okay. And so all I cared about was tasks. That was it. I just wanted tasks. And so now if I go look at my disc, people will tell you, oh, it can't change. BS. Now I'm a D and an I. I'm an influencer and a director. Right. And the gal that runs my company is a CS. She is a conscientious. She's a CEO for sure, but she's very process oriented, meticulous. Like, she's running all of our different businesses, working with our CTO, putting all these technologies in. We can pay more money than anybody else can pay, yet we have half the staff of all of our competitor companies, and our margins are, in most cases, double and in some cases triple and 1.5x of our current competitors. And all because she's so process oriented. So where I'll go sell and politic and inspire and teach and share concepts I've learned, she'll implement them. I start the fire, she stokes it. You have to balance.
Well, so I'm going to stop you there because I want to find out. So about her, who helped her acquire those skills? Did you have an opportunity to mentor her, or she came to you like that? And how about other people in your organization that you would like to get to her level? Do you have a process that you can help a young person become like her?
So, yes. Yeah, bigger question. I've got to answer like 4 questions to get to the answer to that question. Yes, I mentored her, but she was the way she was. Like, she was a high C. That was her personality, a conscientious. She really trusted no one but herself. So where I had to mentor her was to be able to trust others so that she could scale her abilities, to use that C, conscientious, as a measurer to work with many people, both like me and like her, and put them in the right roles to make sure that they were handling and performing, optimally, and so that we could make the best revenue. But she's not the only leader I've worked with. Like, so the DISC is a great way of looking at people from how they're motivated and what their behaviors are going to be once they're motivated. Like, I know in stress, she's going to dive in and handle it personally, right? Whereas me in stress, I'm going to put together a team, delegate, and influence. But I'm also looking at some of the gender biases, right? So, so going into leadership, we might nuance this a little bit, Jonathan, but I promise this, if your entrepreneurs get this, this is a $1 net worth secret that people don't realize. Like if you look at men and women specifically in business, okay, just take men and you study them for 40,000 years of human history. What did we do? We would go hunt an animal that would kill us back 40,000 years ago, right? So what did we have to do? We had to be quiet. We had to be thorough. We had to focus. Okay. Like, every woman you ever talk to, if you're like, hey, has your husband or boyfriend ever ignored you? 100% will say yes. We would never ignore somebody we love. So that's bullshit. They just don't understand that when we are wired into focusing on that thing that we are hunting for as a man, okay, we tune out everything else. That's just part of our nature. Now, if she comes and puts her hand on us, we're like, oh, hey, babe, what's up? But we didn't hear it. We're wired to turn it off. Women are wired completely differently, okay? And they're fascinating. All of my companies, by the way, are run by women for this reason. Like, CEOs can be great as men, but they can also be great as women. But high-level execs, I actually prefer women in those roles, believe it or not. And here's why. You take women over 40,000 years of human history, what did they do? They had to go gather nuts, roots, berries, fruits, and things while the men were out hunting. Problem is, one set of berries nourishes your kids, and another set of berries, they eat it, you have to watch them die a slow death of poisoning. Imagine the toxic torture they're going to experience, right? So now, women developed a very different type of focus, and challenge me on this. Like, go home tonight and talk to your wife or your spouse and ask her, hey, babe, I talked to this crazy, weird guest, okay? And he said that when you go home at night, you got like these voices in your head calling you to the unmade bed, calling you to the mess the dog made, calling you to the mess the kids made, calling you to what the wind blew down outside, calling you to the dishes in the sink, calling you to this, and you can't stop. You can't go sit down. You have to go to the closest thing and just handle that crap. It's called diffused awareness. They are so radically environmentally aware, whereas men have this extreme focus. Women have this balancing energy because the feminine is all about environments, maintenance, and all of that. And so when you put a woman in a role where she's maintaining as a conscientious all of the personalities and the processes as a diffused awareness user, she's brilliant. And while men can generally, I love men in my sales roles. Not that women can't do it. They can. They balance relationships well too. But men, for like, if I'm taking somebody, I'm like, I need somebody to work in mergers and acquisitions. I'm going to try to get a guy. Okay. But if I'm going to try to get somebody to run a company, I'm going to try to get a girl. And if she's a high C, high S, I'm going to work with her one way. If she's a high D, high I, I'm going to work with her another way. And the process that I'm going to work is I'm going to always promote a high C, I, S with a high D, high I underneath and a high C, I, high S underneath them, because they balance each other like a spring. They create that flexibility. If you put a high D, high I on top of a high D, high I, they'll kill each other. If you put a high C, high S on top of a high C, I, S, they'll be very inefficient and they'll both want to handle everything.
So, Preston, where as you're listening to this, as you were evolving as a leader, how did you acquire this information? Did it all come from mentors, or how much of it was from the School of Hard Knocks?
I'd say probably 50-50, but I mean, a lot of mentors, and maybe 70-30. But mentors don't even have to be somebody you know. Like a lot of the information I just gave you on men and women, you can go buy all of Alison Armstrong's books, Keys to the Kingdom, The Queen's Code, any of that. She talks about the masculine, the feminine, male, female, biochemistry, neurochemistry, all that, which is not necessarily relevant to business until you put it into a business, which I don't think she ever intended. So if you're hearing this, Alison, hi, but you put that into a business and you will compound your returns massively.
Right. Again, everything you're saying, you've been educating yourself, you've been acquiring knowledge, you've been acquiring skills, and this is really the foundation where you and I are very simpatico. If you didn't read those books, if you didn't have those mentors, join those groups, I don't think you'd probably be where you are today.
For sure, no. For sure, no. Nobody's an island.
So the lesson there is you just can't, become the leader and just wing it. You got to do what you've been doing, which is really working at it, acquiring knowledge, acquiring skills. Anyway, I could go on forever. This has been really an amazing, amazing conversation. You have so much to offer. I see why you did coaching, because it's an endless amount of really valuable information that's actionable. A lot of the stuff I hear about this often is not very actionable. Almost everything we talked about today, literally tomorrow morning, you could actually put it into play. So let me ask you, so if people want to get a hold of you, learn more about you, can you share with people how they can learn more about you and maybe even be in contact with you?
Sure, yeah. All of my social medias are or the Preston Brown. So if you go to Instagram, it's like the Preston Brown. Facebook, it's the Preston Brown. But I've got like a free gift for everyone. I created a masterclass, and it would be a lot more to go into right now than they need. But at www.automateyou.com, you can learn the 7 stages of entrepreneurship, and you can kind of figure out, okay, well, which stage am I in? And every stage has different problems and different things you're going to learn that have been categorized into those. At every stage, there's this problem-solving formula, and it's a filter. You take your problems, you dump them into the top. The goal is efficiency. There's 3 parts: alignment, simplicity, and foresight. 4 things you measure: culture, clarity, capacity, and cash. And only 6 things you can change: price, product, people, place, promotion, and process. And so any problem you get, you dump it into this filter, and it kind of like, you remember that little ball that you put it in and it kind of bounce off all the pegs? Well, it comes out and it tells you exactly what to do. So when you can figure out your stage and your problem-solving formula, then you start making it very easy to make your reality trump your ideology. And then everyone can get rich. Like making money, getting rich is really easy. You just have to follow simple steps and stop listening to all the noise. Go get the information from the people that have and are doing it in today's society.
Right, because there's a lot of white noise out there, and I love that. I'll provide a link in the notes below for people to go to that and your other contacts. And really, really enjoyed it. Hope to do this again. Thank you so much for your time. I hope everybody really enjoyed all the words of wisdom, the really actionable stuff. Preston, you're an amazing leader, very inspirational. Love your life stories and how that's blended into your success. And we wish you nothing but the best, and we'll be in touch. All right. Thank you, everybody. If you like this interview, this podcast, please comment, like, and subscribe. And we will see you on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.